Testing, testing. Good afternoon, everyone. It is now 1 o'clock. We'll call this meeting to order of the Township of Mapleton Council meeting on Tuesday, March 22nd, 2022. I'd like to thank everybody for coming today. We have a full house of staff and some visitors. This is good to have everyone here. And although the mask mandate has been taken off, you can see there's a few of us wearing them around the council chambers. That's okay. You get the choice to make your choice, and some of us have made the choice to keep the mask on. And that's what we're allowed to do here. So without further ado, we're going to stand for O Canada. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Mr. Clerk, for the new rendition of O Canada. Any declaration of pecuniary interest? Seeing none, we'll move on. Confirmation minutes. Oh, yeah, sorry, my apologies. Yes, I did get your email. Go ahead.
I have to declare pecuniary interest on agenda item land division file 23/22. Just MTE Consultants is on the file and MTE Consultants.
Thank you, Councillor. Totally forgot. My apologies. Confirmation of minutes then. Item 4.1, moved by Councillor, second by Councillor Craven, that the minutes of the Township of Mapleton Council meeting held on March 8th, 2022 be confirmed as circulated in the agenda package. Moved by Councillor Otten, second by Councillor Craven. And all those in favor? It's carried. Any matters arising from the minutes? And matters under the Planning Act, we'll move into that. First one we have here is consent application and item 6.1. The recommendation here is that the Council of the Township of Mapleton support application B23-22 as presented for land described as Part 10, Concession 9, are municipally known as 76 McGivern, with the following conditions: that the owner satisfy all the requirements of the municipality, financial and otherwise, for the proper development of the subject lands, including but not limited to outstanding taxes. That payment be made of a fee of $332 for a letter of clearance. That a copy of the deposited reference plan be submitted to the township. That driveway access to the severed lands can be provided to the satisfaction of road authority with jurisdiction. That servicing on the severed land of the Mapleton. That council authorizes the planning and development manager to file with the secretary treasurer of the planning and land committee of the county of Wellington a letter of clearance of these conditions on completion of the same. Mover, please. Oh, we have it. My apologies. Yes. Keep forgetting we're not in Zoom anymore. So this is moved by Councillor Craven, second by Councillor Martin, and I'll turn it over to Linda Redmond. Linda.
Thank you, Mayor. So this application, you may recall, it was here a year or so ago to sever the whole parcel from the adjacent farm. Now the owner is back to divide the industrial portion from the commercial portion. So he's developed the industrial section of the property at the back, and now he'd like to sever off the commercial and proceed with a development on that site. Currently, they're showing the access onto McGivern. So it looks like a flag-shaped lot at this point in time. But eventually, hopefully, there'll be a road in the behind that the industrial portion will be accessing, and then the commercial will be the whole frontage. We have no concerns with this application. We've dealt with this applicant and this property for quite a while, so there is a vision on this site, and we've been working towards that. This is one of the steps. We have no concerns with the application, and there's no staff concerns, as you can see in the report.
Thank you, Linda, for that. So we'll go with questions from members of council then on this consent application. Councilor Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Ms. Redmond. Do we have any idea? I know it's not specific to this specific development, but the development of that parcel of land, we kind of keep piecemealing together, bit by bit. I know it's up to the landowner to do the development, I guess, right? But do we have any sort of master plan or what they're looking for out of that chunk of property on the edge of Moorfield?
Linda?
Through you, Mayor, the edge of Moorfield, you're talking about the site, this site, the commercial portion that they're severing off. We've sat with them and discussed different options and concepts at this point in time, but nothing formally has been submitted. So until that happens, we really can't say, but what we have discussed is a commercial residential mix. That's all we can say at this point.
Thank you very much, Linda, for that. And thank you, Councillor, for that question. I had the same question that you had, so I'm glad we can answer that. Not to the total satisfaction. I know I like the idea of commercial residential mix. That would be all right if you have some businesses and some residential above it. That's something we're striving for, to get more residential in our community and above some, especially on these lands which are designated as commercial lands, to have some residential with it. Further questions, comments? Not seeing any. All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Moving on to the next item, item 6.2. This is moved by Councillor Martin, second by Councillor Craven. The Council of the Council of the Township of Mapleton support consent application B24-22 and as presented for lands described as west half of part lot 1, concession 2, and are municipally known as 6499 Wellington Road 11 with the following conditions: that you satisfy all the requirements of the local municipality, financial and otherwise, for the proper and orderly development of the subject lands, including but not limited to outstanding taxes. That payment be made of a fee of $332 for a letter of clearance. That a copy of the deposit reference plan be submitted to the township. That driveway access to the retained lands can be provided to the satisfaction of the township, Mapleton. That zoning compliance to restrict residential uses on the retained lands is addressed to the satisfaction of the township of Mapleton. The zoning compliance to permit the oversized storage shed on the severed parcel is addressed to the satisfaction of the township of Mapleton. That servicing can be accommodated on the severed lands to the satisfaction of the township of Mapleton. And further, that council authorizes the planning and development manager to file with the secretary treasurer of the planning and land division committee at the county of Wellington a letter of clearance of these conditions on completion of the same. Linda.
Through you, Mayor, this is your typical surplus farm dwelling severance, nothing out of the ordinary. There will be a requirement for rezoning to restrict the residential use on the farm parcel. And there's also an oversized structure on the residential parcel. So that will have to be dealt with at the same time. Otherwise, no concerns.
Thank you. We'll move on to questions from council then. Seeing no questions, all those in favor? That's carried. Moving on to the next item, 6.3. There's actually two options on this one here. I'm going to read them both for council. So there's the recommendation one, that council of the Township of Mapleton request the County of Wellington Land Division Committee to defer application B 2622 until a minor variance has been granted to permit a reduced lot size for the proposed severed parcel. And option two would be the council of the Township of Mapleton support consent application B 26-22 for lands described as part lot 2 concession 1. Our part 1 RP 61R9323 and are municipally known as 6982 Wellington Road 7 with the following conditions and amendments. That the owner satisfy all the requirements of the local municipality, financial and otherwise, for the proper and orderly development of the subject lands, including but not limited to outstanding taxes. That payment be made of a fee of $332 for a letter of clearance. That a copy of the deposit reference plan be submitted to the township. That driveway access be to the retained lands can be provided to the satisfaction of the Township of Mapleton. That a lot area of the severed lands is approved at 0.3 hectares minimum to the satisfaction of the Township of Mapleton. That zoning compliance to rezone the retained lands is addressed to the satisfaction of the Township of Mapleton. That zoning compliance on the severed lands is addressed to the satisfaction of the Township of Mapleton. That servicing can be accommodated on the retained and severed lands to the satisfaction of the Township of Mapleton. That the proposed 368 meters squared road widening along Hannah Street West be conveyed to the Township of Mapleton in a manner that is satisfactory to the township. And further, that council authorizes the planning and development manager to file with the secretary treasurer of the Planning and Land Division Committee at the County of Wellington a letter of clearance of these conditions on completion of the same. Turn it over to you, Linda.
Through you, Mayor. So this application is for a new lot in Elma, and the minimum lot size in Elma is 0.4 of a hectare. They're proposing a lot of 0.27, so just a little over half. The concern with this application is not necessarily the creation of the new lot. We're fine with that. It's the size of the retained parcel, or in this case, I guess that's the severed parcel, but the existing house. It's not, we don't feel it's big enough to provide flexibility for future development on those lands. You know, if they want to rebuild the house at any point in time, or if they need a new septic, which oftentimes happens when they fail. So we're concerned that the size isn't big enough to accommodate those facilities in the future. The other issue is that there is a proposed subdivision we've been working on, pre-consulting with the applicants on, very close to this property, and the minimum lot size there is 0.3 hectare and larger. And that is because of the fact they need that size in order to accommodate a septic system. And in that case, it's a tertiary. So the existing lot now has a conventional system, which usually that's too small of a lot for that kind of system, but it's existing. So it can work right now, but we're worried about the future. So having said all that, that's why there's the two options on the table for council. So if you want me to explain the difference and what the direction to go in, I can do that, or if it's clear.
Please go ahead.
Okay. So the first option is that if council wants to support the smaller parcel, the 0.27 hectare parcel, we would recommend that it be deferred so that a minor variance can proceed ahead of the consent. If they are approved for the undersized lot, they will need zoning relief, whether they do 0.3, 0.27. If it's under the 0.4, they need zoning relief, and that would form a condition of the consent. My concern is if they go too small, and it goes before committee of adjustment, they might not approve the smaller size, and then the consent would fail. They wouldn't get it. So because we're dealing with the potential of that happening, it would make more sense that it goes to committee of adjustment first. for their approval and then for the consent afterwards. If council, the other option is that council supports the consent but asks that it be 0.3 of a hectare minimum. Still needs minor variance, still could fail at the Committee of Adjustment, but with the 0.3, there's planning support for that size. So that is helpful. So these are recommendations that would go to land division. So it would be my advice that depending on, if council supports the planning recommendation now, they send both those options forward to the land division committee as well. So they're aware, that that's where you stand in this instance.
Thank you, Linda. We'll open it up for questions from council members then. Councilor Martin.
Thank you. I'm struggle busing a little bit on this one. Do we, through you to Linda, do we have an idea why the applicant can't meet the 0.4? Like what I understand, creating new building lot, but we have policies in place for a reason. So outside of creating a larger building lot, is there any other rationale or justification for the ask?
Linda?
The justification that came in to maintain that 0.27 lot division was that the lot line follows a tree line. However, for them to go to meet it, so if we want them to meet the 0.4 hectare for the parcel that has a house, then there's a bit of a limitation on the parcel, that the new parcel being created because of the natural environment that travels through the parcel, that there's a setback requirement to any septic and new house. I don't think if we ask them to enlarge the house parcel, I don't think they're going to have enough land left over on the new parcel to meet the setback to the natural environment. So I think they have to make this other parcel smaller for that purpose in order to have a buildable lot. So that's why we're supportive of a bit smaller. But that wasn't given as a rationale. Just from me looking at it, that to me is it. There's topographical and environmental features on the site that justify the way they've divided the lot. But I do feel they can make it bigger.
Thank you, Linda. Follow up?
Yeah, I kind of like the GRCA's building envelopes that they provided of a 0.34. I don't know. I just, the agent on this file always seems to be pushing the envelope on every single thing we get from him. And again, we have policies for a reason, a 1 acre lot to make sure that they've got the space they need, to drop it down to a 0.34. Could that be considered an option 3, or you would like us to choose from one of the 2 options?
Linda?
It's council's decision. An option 3 is fine. I went with the 0.3 only because, like I said, we have a plan of subdivision that's hopefully coming in very soon with lots that are 0.3, and we've accepted that. So, and it's the same agent.
Thank you. And you will notice that on this option 2, Councillor Martin, that it's minimum 0.3. So whatever direction we give the planner, if they want to go to 0.34 or 3.1 or 3.2, whatever, the minimum is going to be the 0.3. Councillor Craven.
Yeah, you have to be pretty careful in Alma with your lot sizes because of sewage, because the water table is so high that you have to have a pretty good area to spread out your sewage, or you're going to be in trouble with water. I'm not too fussy about this application at all.
Thank you, Councillor Craven. Further questions, Councillor Ottens?
Thank you. I'm just curious, looking at the aerial shot here on page 50, what they want to me looks larger than what's existing on the lots down the road there, 42, 46, 52. So how Like, how do you justify that to this application when the neighbors have smaller lots?
Linda?
Through you, Mayor. So 100%, that's a great question. But those are historical lots created at the time when maybe the building code requirements were different for septic and well. But now we know what can work and what can't.
Council Douglas?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, to Linda, just wondering if they've done any preliminary engineering on the septic sizing to see if they can, make it fit with the proposed or the retained lots. Just if there's been any investigation or soil work or anything done.
Thank you. Linda?
Not that I'm aware of. I know the agent has indicated in his attached letter that they've started they have hired a hydrogeologist to do some investigative work, but that's about it. So I don't know what that would entail.
Any further questions? Councilor Ottens?
I don't know if this is a thing, but is it possible that the two lots could be required to have a shared septic system? And that way, that's not.
We'll go to Patty on this one.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. In order to have a shared system that transitions over a property line, it would be under the jurisdiction of the Ministry of the Environment and Climate Change. So it wouldn't be something that we would be able to do here. The septic has to be fully contained on the property in which it's being used to fall under the requirements of the Ontario Building Code. So it's not impossible, but you'd have to go through a whole nother series of approvals.
Thank you. Other questions or comments? So I need some direction here from council of option 1 or option 2. I'm kind of liking direction of option 2, where the minimum is 0.3. I think that's the direction that the planner would like to go to. Councilor Douglas?
Yeah, I'd support option 2.
Councilor Craven? Councilor Martin? Councilor Ottens? Okay, then we'll look at option 2, then council. Any further questions or comments with using option number 2? All right, then I'll call the question on option number 2. All those in favor of option number 2? That's carried. Moving on to the next one, item 6.4. Moved by Councilor Martin, second by Councilor Craven, that the Council of Township of Mapleton support consent application B30-22 as presented for the lands described as Survey Moore Lot 146 and 147, part lots 145 and 148, with the municipal address of 23 Adam Brown Street in Moorfield, with the following conditions: that the owner satisfy all the requirements of the municipality, financial and otherwise, for the proper and orderly development of the subject lands, including but not limited to the outstanding taxes. That payment be made for the fee of $332 for a letter of clearance. That a parkland dedication fee be paid as provided in the Planning Act. That driveway access to the severed lands can be provided to the satisfaction of the Township of Mapleton. The servicing can be accommodated on the severed lands to the satisfaction of the Township of Mapleton. That the applicant provides a municipal drain reapportionment or a mutual agreement as determined by the drainage superintendent as per the applicable township fees and charges by law. And that a copy of the deposited reference plan be submitted to the township. And further, that council authorizes the municipal clerk to file with the Secretary Treasurer of the Planning and Land Division Committee of the County of Wellington a letter of clearance of these conditions on completion of the same. Linda?
Thank you, Mayor. So this is just a standard new residential lot in Moorfield. They have ample area and frontage for this parcel. The only issue on the property is there is this underground municipal drain that will be, there's a minimum setback to that. So once they've established exactly where the house is going, there may be a requirement for a minor variance application, but that can happen after the severance. It's not a requirement of the severance. Otherwise, there's no concerns with this application.
Thank you, Linda. Let me open up for questions on this application. Any questions or comments? Then I'll call the question. All those in favor of this application? That's carried. All right, so the next item we have up here is item 7.1. We have a presentation by, we got both Lawrence?
Lawrence and Julie.
Lawrence Cudlip and Julie Hardy from CIMA Plus on greenhouse gas inventory for the community. And once we're set up, we'll turn that right over to Lawrence and Julie. Hello, both of you.
Hi, folks.
Afternoon.
So hopefully
Hello,
this,
everyone.
hopefully this works, folks, because we just switched things. I'm going to put myself off of video. And I'm just about to share your presentation. Just give me one quick sec here. Okay, so sorry for the makeshift. You guys, the presentation is there and you're free to go.
Okay, thank you. Well, hi, everyone. My name is Julie Hardy. I'm the director of the sustainability department at CIMA. And I'm going to introduce our GHG inventory for the community. I believe you have the technical proposal. I decided to put sort of a presentation that was a bit more visually appealing than the actual technical proposal. So I'll briefly describe who we are, although I have a feeling that you've already worked with CIMA in the past. And then we'll look at the GHG inventory for your community and its benefits, our work plan that we've proposed, and of course, at the end, we can present our fees. So we can start with the next slide. So I think that you're all pretty aware of CIMA, and maybe I'll let you introduce yourself, Lawrence, too.
Okay, yeah. So hello, everybody. My name is Lawrence Cudlip. I am a partner and senior director for architecture, and now I'm wearing a mantle looking after the building group in general for the Toronto offices throughout our client base in Ontario, which includes you good folks. We've done a little bit of work with Manny and his team at the PMD Arena, and we've helped, along with Julie's group, actually, in looking at some major subsidy programs with the federal government in terms of sustainable new initiatives throughout the country, actually. So we're looking forward to getting some good news on that very soon. So I'm going to be the proverbial fly on the wall here. Julie's team's and Julie in particular has done a great job pulling this presentation together. So I will quietly sit back and be there if there are any questions.
Thanks, Lawrence. Yeah, it was actually the incentive program by Infrastructure Canada with the green and inclusive community buildings. So we're hoping that we can get some feedback. We did conduct a resiliency analysis as well as an energy efficiency analysis that was required as part of the incentives. So I won't talk too much more about CIMA, but basically, I think we want to really emphasize the fact that we're pro collaboration, working one-on-one and side by side to really thoroughly evaluate how we can deliver the best project. We want this to lead to more innovative and sustainable ideas designed to meet our greatest challenge, which is climate change and our limited resources. Next slide. So we do have a very big buildings engineering group, as well as our energy and resources sector, and our transportation, as well as infrastructure. And within all of these different types of sector, we try to provide engineering solutions that are based on sustainability and resiliency for the future as well. At CIMA, we have a center of excellence in sustainability, which provides really a harmonized sustainability and social responsibility approach throughout all of our offices, provides leadership and best practices, research, support, and training for sustainable sustainable development. I'm actually part of the person directing this Center of Excellence in Sustainability and the sustainable engineering practices. We've just recently conducted our own GHG inventory as well for SEMA, so that's really great. And for your GHG inventory, maybe the next slide then, thanks. For your community, basically, if you want to go to the next slide, I thought that was great. I did Google Township of Mapleton, and this is the only photo that came up. It was really beautiful. I hope it's really from your town, but it's a great photo. Basically, the objectives of the GHG inventory developed in compliance with the GPC protocol, so the Global Protocol for Community Scale Greenhouse Gas Inventories, to develop a comprehensive and robust GHG inventory to better understand the emissions contributions of different activities in the community. So we want to establish a base year for this GHG emissions inventory, set GHG reduction targets, and track performance. Ensure consistency and transparent measurement and reporting of GHG emissions, and provide data for benchmarking purposes of comparable GHG data with other Canadian municipalities. And the next slide is an example of these types of data portal or benchmarking data that you can be part of. I thought this Global Covenant of Mayors for Climate and Energy was quite visual, and the pathway to achieve sort of climate resiliency, and you want to start by basically making a commitment and then assessing the impacts and risks, which was basically what the GHG inventory would be the starting point, as we're going to assess what the impacts are and what the risks are as well. So the Global Covenant of Mayors, it's the largest global alliance for climate leadership across the globe. And really it's a commitment to reduce your GHG emissions, to increase resiliency, and to track progress over the long term. So if your township decides to commit to this Global Covenant of Mayors, the next steps would be to take stock of the current emissions and impacts of climate change in the city. Which brings me to our work plan. And this is not a requirement. There's other data portals as well too that you can look at declaring your GHG, such as the Carbon Disclosure Project as well too, but it's one of the options for your township. So the work plan basically is to conduct a GHG inventory for the township of Mapleton in compliance with the GPC protocol. Essentially, we'd start with a kickoff meeting to look at the data that we can obtain, what the information is. This will help us to determine the baseline year as well too. And we found it very important to provide training to the employees, because just to ensure that you have a good understanding of the GHG emissions, and to give you the tools to set targets and develop a GHG reduction action plan, and to follow up on your progress over the long term. Next step. So the next steps would be to define your sources and your boundaries. This is pretty a great visual I found when we look at the different scopes of GHG inventories. It's taken directly from the GPC protocol. So scope 1 are all the things that are within your city boundary. So agriculture, forestry, and other land use, industrial processes and product use, in boundary transportation, which is can be as well as out boundaries. So it depends if it's going to be assigned to scope 1 or scope 3. There's also the stationary fuel combustion and your waste and wastewater. And there's also the scope 2, which is grid supplied energy. So part of the GHG inventory is just to establish all of the sources and boundaries for your emissions. And what we would do then is to develop a calculator that can be used specifically for your township based on the different types of sources and boundaries that we've just evaluated within this process. And then basically this calculator would be for you to use in the subsequent years. And then we would develop the preliminary GHG inventory. present the findings to you and your members and revise the report with comments and feedback and finalize for publication. You can also decide if you want to go for a third-party verification, but it's not a requirement. And I just wanted to show an example of the GHG inventory results from the Waterloo region. There's quite a few of them, quite a few cities that have already conducted the GHG inventory, but you can look, 49% is transportation. 1% is waste. There's also emissions from methane from livestock at 5%, 18%, and 27% is workplace, but it will be different for your township basically. And the deliverable for this first part of our proposal is to provide a GHG inventory report in compliance with the protocol and provide you with the GHG calculator for subsequent annual reporting. And then the next part comes the fun part. This is where we put a plan into action, basically. So we'll workshop together to identify reduction targets and strategies, research various grants and incentives programs applicable to the project. I'm sure you've already known, you know quite a few of the different funding applications from the Federation Canadian of Municipalities, but we can look specifically what can be used to implement the reduction measures, such as the GHG reduction pathway feasibility or the GHG impact retrofit. So this is also part of our action plan, is to research these to help offset the cost of the reduction measures. And then after that, with our team, we can look at the GHG reduction measures and their associated costs and develop this preliminary action plan to put into place over so many years to determine, do we want to achieve a certain carbon neutrality by a certain date, for example. And our deliverable will be to provide a GHG reduction action plan. And the next steps is basically our work plan, which is a bit more detailed. I'm not sure if you would like me to go through item by item, but basically just a bit more detail into the GHG inventory, where we'll prepare a list of questions to identify emission sources, have a kickoff meetings with municipality employees, prepare the list of data to be collected, provide training on GHG emissions, and that can be done anytime as well too. If you prefer to have it somewhere after we present the preliminary findings, that could be an option as well too. Model drafting, description of the inventory boundary, list of the GHG emission sources, and categorize emissions by scope, and etc. Basically, we'll develop the GHG calculator as part of the GPC protocol. And then actually do the calculations, develop the preliminary report, and present it to you at your next at the municipality meeting to present the preliminary results. And then after that, with the action plan, basically will be the workshop to identify reduction targets and strategies. I found that this would be really interesting to have a meeting in place as well too. I have a person that actually works out of the Mississauga office, so I do have a local presence that would help to work with you on the different initiatives. I'm not sure if there's any questions at this point, but the fees basically are $54,650 for the GHG inventory and the report. And then the development of the action plan in collaboration with Mapleton to establish GHG reductions and strategies. And if we find that there are some of the funding opportunities that are really interesting, we would have to provide a small fee or work with you to basically provide the application for the incentives, because we all know that it's quite documentation and intensive, as Lawrence can probably mention, when we put together all the documentation required for the green and inclusive building, community buildings.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Julie. Okay, sorry. Here I am talking away and not even on the mic.
Oh, no, I was wondering if you were on mute.
Well, yeah, that's just me not pushing the button again, and I didn't get the whip out banging me yet. So I just wanted to thank you for providing this information. I know it's part of the township plan, the CEO's plan. I'm looking forward to a GHG inventory and looking at doing some reductions here in the township. Just going to turn it over for members of council for questions. Councilor Douglas.
Yes, thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Can you just clarify the scope? Are you looking at the township wide or just the township facilities and fleet vehicles? Or I'm just trying to get that scale correct.
Thank you. Follow up.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. So how does the wider community get involved with either the outcomes or part of the process? Well, I'm trying to figure out what the outcomes of the final report could look like. Well, if we're looking at the community as a whole, how do those, I guess, other community members, like agricultural community, for instance, like what would an outcome look like or a recommendation look like from the final report that, I'm just trying to figure out how we can make a change to the agricultural community through this process, or what kind of a recommendation or outcome could come from this report.
Thank you, Julie. Just to follow up with that question. I'm looking at this and I'm seeing, some great work to be done. Where does a community involvement come in place, being do we invite people from the community to come and have their say in this? At what point do we bring in community members? Because we have a lot of community members who are very environmental conscious, and we'd like to include them. So where in this process do they come in?
Yes. And so the best way to engage them is to have them brought in to within this work plan when we develop the action plan, basically.
Thank you. I know there's a number of members of the community that would be excited to be part of this process. I know that May and I have talked about a few people that they've reached out to us and they've asked if we would, have some kind of committee that's an environmental committee. And I think this is a good start for something like that.
Yeah, and I mean, with the, I think that would be great and would get their engagement on board from the start.
I like that plan. Further questions from council then? Councillor Ottens?
Thank you, through you, Mayor. I'm just wondering about the timeline of this, given that there's an election in October and this kind of goes over the old council, new council. So we'd be, if we went ahead with this, then we'd be making decisions on behalf, like for the new council, plus the fact that it's not in our current budget. So we'd also be obligating this expense. So I'm kind of just wondering how this would all fit in with the old, given that it overlaps two councils.
I'll turn that over to the CEO.
Thank you, Worship. So, I mean, there's nothing wrong with starting a project on one council and moving on to the next. It's done all the time. And this is something that really wouldn't affect council business in any financial terms or otherwise, or policy term, maybe policy, but by the time the project is done, policy will be setting, it'll be next council. As far as budget goes, in my report, there is, I understand it's not budgeted for, but we put in, we've reallocated some dollars from an executive assistant that we're not going to hire so that we can pay for this project in its entirety, really, and have some money left over. We feel this is very important to start and demonstrate to the public that we are serious in reducing our greenhouse emissions. So yeah, it's part of my work plan.
So it's also part of the CEO's work plan that we agreed to for the year. Go ahead.
So is this the type of project that's done in all municipalities? Is it legislatively required, or is this something that Mapleton specifically is doing? I know they said some other larger communities have done it. I'm just wondering how broad this sort of thing is being done.
It's part of the overall government's goals to reduce climate but
Thank you. Further questions? Anything else? Thanks both of you for the presentation. It's very well done. And we look forward to speaking to you more on a lot of the issues that we have here. And we certainly hope that I know that Lawrence has worked with us on the big plan for the arena. So look forward to hearing about that as well.
yes, fingers crossed.
Yeah, and Manny and everybody gathered there, we're certainly happy to be part of this. I think this is a really
Thank you both.
Thank you very much for your time. Have a great day.
All right, take care.
Thanks. Bye now.
Yep. So I do have a recommendation here, moved by Councillor Martin, second by Councillor Craven, that the presentation by Julie Hardy, SEMA Plus, regarding GHG inventory for the community be received for information. Any further questions or comments? All those in favor of receiving information? Thank you, thank you. Next is we have item 7.2, which is the Aqua presentation. Don Irvine and Mike Mortimer. Welcome, both of you.
Yep, can everybody hear me? That's good. Good afternoon, through your worship, members of council. Thank you for having Aqua here today. What a pleasure it is to be back in person. I'm going to admit I might be a little rusty on the first couple of slides. I'm used to doing this over Zoom or WebEx or whatever the platform may have been for the past 2 years. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm Mike Mortimer. I'm the regional hub manager for the Georgian Highlands region, which may with Vine, who's the senior ops manager for your respective systems. I'd like to also thank Natalie Baker for preparing the presentation. Couldn't be with us today. She's our business development manager, and she was pivotal in creating the presentation today. There we go. The timing of this presentation makes sense, although not the primary focus of today. There is a regulatory requirement to present to members of council, the owners of the system, to prepare and have passed a water summary report by March 31st of each year. So while I'll touch on this requirement, as well as the water quality report, which would have been presented or available to the public by February 28th of each year, we're also going to look at local operations, provide an overview of Aqua within the township of Mapleton. And although we're not new to Mapleton and not new to this council, it is always nice to provide a higher level overview of Aqua and what we do. We are the largest water and wastewater operator in Canada, managing more than $20 billion in municipal infrastructure. We currently service more than 75% of the existing outsourced market in Ontario. And our clients are made up of municipalities, obviously, First Nations, we do industry, institutions, and Aqua has approximately 800 employees working across the province. I should mention at this time, we've also just announced last week, our new CEO and president of Aqua is Alicia Fraser. Those of you who maybe know Alicia from her previous roles. At the corporate level, a services contract with Aqua provides the ability to utilize and connect with other services that Aqua has to offer. And we usually refer to ourselves as a total solutions provider. We've probably heard that referenced in the past. Our goal is to assist clients in managing their water and wastewater facilities and associated distribution and collection systems at every stage of the asset lifecycle, and to help them to ensure the sustainability of their water and wastewater systems. So as mentioned, operations and maintenance is our core business, is what we do for Mapleton, but we also offer our clients a broad array of related services such as financing, planning, engineering, construction, training, technical and advisory services as well. Aqua takes the shared services approach to operations, which allows us to find economies of scale and cost savings for our clients, and this makes sense. For example, this approach allows us to purchase bulk supplies such as chemicals and equipment province-wide, which can result in significant cost savings to the municipalities. This approach also allows for stability and risk mitigation to our operations. There is real value in shared services and the total solutions, resulting in efficiencies and effectiveness throughout our operations. So this structure reflects our commitment to meeting the needs of our clients by facilitating the efficient sharing of management, administration and operational systems to benefit our clients, again, referring to our hub and spoke model. And so the regional hub, Mapleton's part of a larger hub ranging from Wasaga Beach all the way over to Tobermory and Saugeen Shores. Manages, operates, and maintains approximately $4.4 million of your water and wastewater assets through our multi-year contracts. Under the current contract between Aqua and the township, we operate and maintain the Drayton Water Treatment Facility, Drayton Sewage Pumping Station and Lagoon, the Moorfield Water System, and the Moorfield Collection System. And as part of an O&M contract, typical services would include daily checks, both in treatment distribution, flushing programs, routine, major maintenance, sampling, lab testing, chemical procurement, as well as pump station cleanouts and lagoon maintenance. So now we get to the good stuff, but with all of our drinking water systems that fall under OREG 170, which Drayton and Moorfield do. That wouldn't have happened in Zoom. Both these systems fall under Reg 170, so annual drinking water inspections are conducted by the Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks. In addition to the regulations, inspections evaluate conformance with ministry drinking water related policies and guidance documents. So the procedure of drinking water of Disinfection Ontario would be one of those guidance documents that would be related to the Safe Drinking Water Act. The ministry utilizes a comprehensive multi-barrier approach. So they're going to look at everything from the source, from your wells, right to the distribution, right to the tap of the consumer. For the past 3 years, I don't have it here, but for the past 3 years, 2019 to 2021, both Drayton and Moorfield received 100% on their inspections. So it's a great accomplishment. And again, the success is based on a variety of factors. Of course, we have the frontline staff with Don and his team, but it's also the dedication and commitment and of the owners of the systems, understanding the need for resources, upgrades, and studies in an effort to improving infrastructure over the long run. And we'll touch on capital upgrades in a moment, which demonstrates this commitment. As part of any drinking water system, and in order to maintain a drinking water license, there are several requirements. Again, and one of these requirements is to be an accredited operating authority. This came into play in about 2009, likely, where drinking water systems had to be a licensed system, had to obtain a municipal drinking water license. And there was a variety of, there's a number of variables or criteria to retain a drinking water license, and to be an accredited operating authority is one of these requirements. So with this, there are annual audits performed on the system. So we do internal audits, which are prepared by the operating authority. So Aqua would do our own internal audits. And then there are external audits that are performed and prepared by a third party, in this case, SAI Global. So the difference between an inspection and an audit is that inspections are measuring us against the Safe Drinking Water Act and all the related regulations. And an audit is measuring us against our operational plans, which is a requirement under the Drinking Water Quality Management Standards. So it's not unlike an ISO audit for industry, if you're trying to look for an analogy. As with our inspections, these audit findings reflect the hard work of everyone involved. And also happy to report that there were zero non-conformances identified for 2021 for both systems. Moving on to asset management, Aqua utilizes IBM Maximo, which is represented here as a screenshot. This system is continually updated and further enhanced as maintenance and activities take place. So we use it to track, schedule, document all our maintenance activities, including equipment warranties and capital works. So I spoke of the hub and spoke model and risk mitigation earlier, and this is a great example of the Aqua model as we employ a Maximo team at the corporate level that supports this program across the province. For example, we recently took over for operations for the township of Tay, a little bit northeast of here. One of the first things we did was we go in and we tag all the assets. It's one of the first activities we do, so that this program can be initiated, as it really is the driver for many of the tasks that may take place over an operating year. So quick snapshot, there are currently 198 pieces of equipment within the facilities owned by the Township of Mapleton that have been tagged. And this slide shows the breakdown of the 329 work orders that would have been generated and completed in 2021. So of the 329, we have 236 preventative, 63 were operational, 11 were corrective, and 19 were capital. As with any system, there is impactful benefit to annual and preventative maintenance programs. And again, we had 236 of these work orders in 2021. And some of these programs include hydrant maintenance, valve maintenance, and pump maintenance. The goal of these programs is to prolong the life of the asset by performing regular scheduled maintenance. We always use the analogy of a car and how you would perform maintenance on it to prolong the life of it. So this should not only result in less breakdown of the equipment, but it's also a good checkpoint when we do these work orders every year to see if, how far, if there's any signs that perhaps the asset is coming to end of life. And again, we always say proactive replacement is always better than an option than an emergency replacement. So this is really what the Capital Works program is about, and the evaluation of assets and a long-term plan to upgrade or replace. So as I mentioned previously, the success of our operations, our inspections, and our audits has much to do with the strength of a good Capital Works program. And again, this allows for continual improvement to occur across our systems, resulting in improved operations, reduced cost, obviously, and of course, the overall mitigation of risk to providing safe drinking water to all of our consumers. There were $228,837 in capital projects for the 2021 operating year. Every year, the township is provided with a 6-year major maintenance and capital recommendation. This will be moving to a 10-year program in the new amendment. In addition to the CMMS information, so that's the Maximo, this list could be a combination of recommendations maybe that arose from an MECP inspection. There may have been some recommendations from that. Operational knowledge, Dawn staff, or just experience in working in the facilities. Engineering reports maybe come from SEMA. All of these things can be looked at in determining the long-term capital plan. The 6-year plan contains a list of requests for equipment replacements and repairs, as well as the justification as why it is being recommended. And this list would also look at the priority of such projects. Once submitted, we wait for the approval of the township budget for these projects, then work closely with township staff, with Sam and his team to coordinate and complete the approved work. So it's part of the requirement and part of the regulatory requirement for the March 31st and February 28th deadlines. I'm just going to go over a few slides here just to meet those requirements under the Safe Drinking Water Act. So 2021 reporting requirements. There are 3 main reporting requirements outlined in OREG 170. As part of the annual water quality report, I'm not trying to confuse everybody, but that's the one that would have went on the website by February 28th. It's prescriptive. It's got all the water quality data in it. There's a Schedule 16 and a Section 11. As part of the water summary report, which is due March 31st, there's a Schedule 22. It gets a little confusing. So Schedule 16, basically, we're reporting adverse test results and other problems, such as water quality incidents, adverse water quality incidents. Happy to report again for 2021, there were no adverse water quality incidents for Drayton or Murfield. Section 11, in the annual reports, they summarize the quality of the treated water. This might be in terms of turbidity, which is the cloudiness of the water, or chlorine residuals. And again, looking at all the parameters, inorganics, organics, E. coli, total coliform, there was no issues with Drayton or Murfield systems in 2021. And then finally, the Schedule 22, the summary reports, summarizes the quantity of the raw and treated water produced by the facilities. And the important message here is that you're well under your full capacity for both systems. So under Section 11, there are numerous monitoring and reporting requirements. I'm not sure if anybody has the annual report up, but the report template is provided by the Ministry of Environment, so it's very prescriptive. Looks at the full description of each facility, the chemicals used, description of significant expenses during the year. So these are usually the bigger capital works projects referencing the report. And I won't go into too much detail, but again, just important to note, all the water quality parameters. There was no issues of concern, no E. coli, no total coliform in any of the samples taken. Both systems are reduced sampling, plumbing exempt for lead, and are scheduled to be sampled again in 2022. And for both Moorfield and Drayton, sodium is the only parameter that exceeded the half MAC of 20 milligrams per liter. So if you're looking at the chart, it'll say yes for sodium. This is actually not a MAC for sodium. It's only of significance for those on sodium reduced diets. So it's something where if the sodium concentration exceeds 20 milligrams per liter, you're required to notify the local medical officer of health, just for local physicians notifications to their patients who may be on a sodium restricted diet. Moving, Schedule 22, the reporting requirements for Schedule 22 summary reports is to present the latest quantity data. And again, as previously mentioned, no issues of concern with Drayton or Moorfield. For raw water, the average daily volume, in this case, groundwater over the year is compared with the permit to take water limits. The permit to take water outlines the maximum water taking from an individual well, and in some cases, the total amount of water taken. The same comparison is made for the maximum daily volume for treated water. The average daily volume is compared with the municipal drinking water license, and this is water that's actually leaving the wellhead and getting pumped out into the distribution system. For wells, it's mostly the same. For treatment system, maybe where you're pumping into a reservoir and then pumping that out into the distribution system, those values will change a little bit. So to summarize, the 2021 operating year, both systems, again, are operating well within the rated capacity listed. We're looking at about 21% of total capacity for Drayton and about 17% for Moorfield. So in summary, I do want to specifically touch on the regulatory requirement piece, and that is that Drayton and Moorfield drinking water systems met all the requirements under the Safe Drinking Water Act for 2021. All water quality requirements were met, and there were no concerns from a water taking or plant capacity perspective. This is reflected in the fact that there were no adverse water quality incidents in 2021. Both systems received 100% inspection ratings, and there were no water quality concerns. Both systems didn't receive any non-conformances on their external audit for reaccreditation under the municipal drinking water licensing program. So once the summary report is received by council, this would conclude the 2021 reporting season. Aqua is excited to continue to build on this progress in 2022 and look forward to continuing to update council on the progress that we make throughout the year. Be happy to take any questions.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mike, for the presentation. A lot of good information there, and certainly glad to see that we're meeting the requirements. We are responsible, so I'm glad to see that Aqua's doing the work that's required for us to be regulatory. Questions then from council members? Council Craven?
I don't know if it's a question you don't answer or not, but if you can't say you can't answer it. Our projection for growth as far as population is quite high in the next 20 and 30 years. Are we going to have enough water to supply that number of people?
Through your worship, to Councillor Craven, again, look at the capacity right now. I can talk to you in terms of well capacity, and we're at 21%, I believe, for Drayton, 17% for Moorfield. So there's lots of water there. Currently, that's just looking at it in a one perspective, and I don't know what the growth rate would be. I know in my past experience, a water model or some sort of water master plan is required in terms of determining growth and if you're able to meet projected growth in the future. But again, I can't really speak to Mapleton's plans for that, but I can speak to the capacity issue. Again, in my experience, that's looking very well in terms of the near future anyways.
Thank you. It's a good question, Councillor Craven, and I'm sure our water and wastewater master plan will touch on that, because I know we do have significant growth. Probably 1,000 more residential units within the next few years. So we'd have to look at that. I'm glad we're seeing around 22%. I'm sure our wastewater and water master plan will take care of that and answer that question. Further questions then? Comments? All right, I don't see any more. Thank you so much for
Thank you.
coming today and giving us the information that we have. Thank you both. I do have here item 7.2 resolution moved by Councillor Martin, second by Councillor Craven, that the Township of Mapleton Council receive for information the presentation by Aqua, Mike Mortimer, and Don Irvine regarding the review of Aqua operations, annual maintenance, capital projects, inspection results, audit results, annual reports, section 11, section and schedule 22 summary reports. All those in favor? That's carried. Moving on to item 8.1, moved by Councillor Craven, second by Councillor Martin, to the draft minutes of the Economic Development Committee meeting held March 7th, 2022 at 6 p.m. be received for information. Ally?
Through you, Mayor. We just had our first meeting of 2022 and we just went over some events that are going to be happening hopefully this year and available for any questions if you have any.
Any questions on this report or just in general to Ally because she's sitting right there with the mic now? Seeing none, and I call the question. All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Moving on to the next item, moved by Councillor Martin, second by Councillor Craven, that the Building Department Report BD 2022-05 dated March 22nd, 2022 regarding Mapleton Municipal Office Addition be received for information, and further that council authorize staff to proceed with the scope of work outlined in the report. I'm going to turn this right over to Patty Wright.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor, to council. So as you know from the last report, we have a very healthy reserve fund in the building department. And I think the next practical step would be to kind of regroup us into our own space through use of the reserve fund. That way we would have zero impact to the tax base. And it would be more functional and practical for us. And the side effect of that would be to free up 2 additional spaces for other departments, as well as allow the Works Department to remain together as well. So we'd be able to do this and still keep, a minimum of a year operational in reserve as well. So I'm asking for council's blessing to move forward on this project.
Thank you, Patty. An exciting project, of course, for the building department. And certainly we know that we've had some space limitations here. We've been having you in the basement. We brought you upstairs. They're separated all over the place. So this is an option for council to consider to move that whole department into one area and have a separate entrance for them. So they don't need to come through the main building. So I open it up to questions from council members then. Councilor Douglas.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, to Patty. Just wondering if have you established any preliminary construction budgets to go along with the design budget?
Through you, Mayor, to Councillor Douglas. Well, the industry standard of about the 300 per square foot was kind of what we're kicking around, plus working through this procurement policy and allowing us that up to 100,000 to basically get this it'd be a project management, get it to tender, the whole process would be handled by one firm within that procurement policy limit. So we just went with the industry standard for now. We'll have meetings coming forward to get a more specific number to bring back to council for approval.
Thank you. Good question. Next question, Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Patty. A couple questions, I guess. I'm assuming the issue with being downstairs was we're trying to avoid that accessibility issue, right? Was the reason we came upstairs. Did you bat around at all any other possible locations for, like, whether it's, you know, this green space or along this side, or I know taking advantage of the parking spaces is probably a huge, like the parking lot is a huge factor. Just curious if you've had any other discussions or spitballing as far as other locations.
Patty?
Thank you, through you, Mayor. Yeah, we did consider other options. One of the downfalls of the other ideas to the front and to this side, we have septic here. We have three-phase hydro coming in here. We have gas coming in here. We have water out front. All these things came into play to find that this seemed like the most practical solution.
Follow up, Councillor Martin? No, Councillor Craven then.
I'm glad to see this happening. I'm going to certainly support it. And if nothing else, you're going to be your own separate department away from the rest. And people coming in for building permits won't be coming in the main door and interfering with what's going on in the rest of the building.
Thank you, Councillor Craven. Further questions or comments? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor of this report then? That's carried. Moving on to item 9.2.1. And this is the election sign bylaw. We have here moved by Councillor Craven, second by Councillor Martin, that the Township of Mapleton Council receive for information clerk's report CL 2022-03 regarding an election sign bylaw. I turn that over to the clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. With regard to an election sign bylaw, Wellington County and two of the townships have their election sign ordinance within their overall sign bylaw. Two of the townships have standalone election bylaws, and two of the townships have no bylaws at all. So here at Mapleton, of course, we don't have an overall sign bylaw. We have one paragraph in the property standards bylaw. So what I'm asking council to consider is this brief election sign bylaw, which generally is written to be in conformity with the other townships, most importantly, the county. I think the three things would be the size of the signs, probably most importantly though, no election signs until 6 weeks prior to election day. So that would be, say, right after Labor Day, and then 48 hours to remove the election signs.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. And I think, having a separate bylaw, and I knew you and I discussed this yesterday, having a separate bylaw instead of something embedded into another sign bylaw actually makes sense with election signs. I like this idea, and I like that Mapleton is putting a sign bylaw in place prior to not only the provincial election, but the municipal elections this year. So open it up for questions to the clerk on the sign bylaw. Councilor Martin.
Fair enough. All right. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you to the clerk for bringing this initiative forward. My personal opinion would be that I find election signs to be a complete abomination to my eyesight every 4 years. But I think that's also a little self-righteous coming from an incumbent, because new people looking to get their names out there, I think that's one way of doing that. So that being said, historically, we haven't had trouble with signs here. I think, Larry, you noted that in your report. So to create a bylaw, or for me, create a rule for the sake of having a rule, when, with each bylaw comes enforcement, comes resources. I'm not sure it's something I'm really looking to invest any time or energy or resources in on the enforcement side. So I guess I'm not really looking for a bylaw, because I don't think we really have a problem per se, even though it would be a way of, I guess, extending some guidance for people who are looking for that. So I really don't have a strong opinion on it, but I would just love to see them disappear altogether, especially in this digital age. I think there's other good ways of doing it rather than cluttering up my lawn.
So what you're saying, Councillor Martin, is you want to put in a proposal that no signs be allowed during election time. Like, that's what I'm getting from you here. Go to Councillor Ottens then.
Well, I was gonna say the exact same thing. Is there any appetite to just make Mapleton an election sign free zone? No election signs at all? I mean, given that we're trying to be pro-environment, election signs are not the most environmentally and visually appealing thing. And again, I say that as someone who would benefit from them, I guess, as a, you know, when you're up for election or re-election. But I just wondered if that was something we had an appetite for here.
Well, all we need is a motion to that effect on the table. Right now, what we have here is a report by the clerk with regulations on the signs. And I get to your point, Councillor Martin, we don't have a problem here. The clerk has put that in the point into the bylaw and information he's provided. Of course, it's a preventative, right? So if something does happen, then our staff are able to respond to that without having to, council had to come back and make something makeshift. Here's something that's in place that if, say, a sign is put in a position that it shouldn't be in, that also gives our staff their ability to remove that. I'm going to turn it over to the clerk for comment.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just one short comment, and that is we would have no control over signs on county roads within the township, but certainly Councillor Martin, on our own roads and property, we would.
Councillor Craven?
If you're an incumbent, you're known to many of the ratepayers. But if you're not an incumbent and you want to get elected, then one of the better ways to do it is get some signs out on the road, because we may only have one, at the most 2 nights where you can meet with people and have a candidate night sort of thing. So if you're wanting to get elected and you're not an incumbent, it's a good way to get your name out there a little bit, is to have signs. I think I could support some kind of a sign by law. And if you have a sign by law and people are putting signs up that are wrong size and wrong place and so on, then you have a way to deal with them. Rather than send your staff out and, well, see if we can remove that. And somebody says we can't do it because you haven't got a bylaw to cover that. I like to have everything covered here.
Councillor Douglas?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. I don't really have a strong opinion either way, but I remember when I ran the first time, I did make a call to the township to find out if there was a bylaw, because I was looking for direction to where or how I could place my signs. So I think I agree with Councillor Craven, and I support the bylaw.
All right, further comments and questions? Councillor Martin?
So if I understand it right from Larry's comments, so even if we would create a bylaw banning signs, they would still potentially be present in the township because of the county roads that intersect. So it wouldn't necessarily be as effective as one would anticipate.
Yeah, and that's a good comment that was made by the clerk, and a good point made by the clerk. When you're looking at putting up signs, you want them in the most traffic area. That's why you see so many signs being put up on county roads at various intersections and pieces of property. I know you do see them on township roads somewhat, but mostly it's the county roads that you see them on.
So thank you. So to that point about, Paul and Dennis's point about providing guidance and direction. So on the enforcement side, would the enforcement be complaint based, just like the rest of our typical bylaw issues that we have?
Certainly, that's what we would anticipate. The other municipalities have made it a responsibility of the Public Works Director, so that he could simply have them removed quickly, no debate, any offenders.
Thank you. I'm sure Ms. Bettina loves that. Councillor Ottens.
Yeah, so I understand the need for a bylaw of some sort. I did wonder if there was any thought for banning, but since county roads don't apply anyways, then that seems a moot point. Would this bylaw then cover the signs on the county roads within our township as far as size goes and I don't know, attached to a utility pole and all that? Like, do we still have control over the ones on the county roads then?
So I'll turn this over to the clerk, but the county has their own sign bylaw, but I'll let the clerk answer.
In this, yeah, with this particular bylaw, we're mirroring the county's regulations. Just, you can imagine the trouble of ours were different and seems to work for them. So we've just copied it, that portion of it exactly.
Thank you. Follow-up questions? Councilor Craven?
And we've got to be careful too and make sure that we have something to cover the provincial election. I've already had a call from a party, could they put a sign on my lawn? So we need to have something that covers that provincial election for signs too.
Thank you. So, so we have the sign bylaw in front of us. I know we have, you know what, Councillor Martin and Councillor Ottens, I would not be opposed to saying ban all signs. I agree, it's unsightly at times to have so many signs put up, especially when you have, 15 candidates running and they're all in one corner. That could be very unsightly. But with a sign bylaw like this, if some of those signs are in the wrong position, they could be removed, which is important, that we don't have them, especially in those triangle of intersections blocking people's view at corners. So any other questions or comments on this? If not, I'll call the question. All those in favor then of the sign bylaw? That's carried. Thank you. Good discussion. Moving on to the next item, we have 9.2.2, which is Alma unopened road allowance. We have moved here by Councillor Douglas, second by Councillor Ottens. The Township Mapleton Council received for information clerk's report CL 2022-04 dated March 22nd, 2022 regarding portions of unopened road allowances in Alma, namely Alexander Street, Navier Street, Church Street, and Hannah Street. That Township Mapleton Council declares at this open meeting that the real property is surplus, and that further that Township Mapleton Council has determined that an appraisal of the fair market value is not required. And further that Township Mapleton Council has determined that the method of sale is by agreement of purchase and sale. And further that notice of the draft bylaw declaring the road surplus will be given in accordance to the Township's notice provision bylaw 2008-24. And further that the mayor and clerk be authorized to sign any and all ancillary documents pertaining to the sale of said unopened road allowance portions. Mr. Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is obviously an early stage activity for the developer Exact Construction. I spoke to them a couple of weeks ago. They're aware that we don't have another meeting now for 4 or 5 weeks. So they promised to check and asked us to get it on tonight, this afternoon's agenda, which we did. Planner Redmond has graciously helped me put this together, as we don't do too many subdivisions here. And other than that, it's it sticks entirely to our policy with regard to unopened road allowances.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. So we'll open it up for questions then from council. Any questions at all? Comments? All right, all those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Next, we have 9.2.3, moved by Councillor Otten, second by Councillor Douglas. The Township of Mapleton Council received for information clerk's report CL 2022-05 regarding the establishment of rules and procedures with respect to the use of municipal resources during the election campaign period. And that Township of Mapleton Council adopt as presented the following municipal elections policies effective as of the date of passing: use of township property, services, and other corporate resources, and use of municipal resources during the election campaign period. Turn that over to the clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is, as you can see there, it's a municipal ordinance that we create these two policies before May 1st in an election year. Mapleton does actually have these policies, similar policies within the our overall policy manual. But two things, they needed to be cleaned up. And secondly, previous elections, they had been, they have to be in the candidates package. And what was distributed to those candidates was the entire Mapleton policy book, which is 144 pages. So this is really just to polish them off and put them in separately. So it's going to be one page in the candidates package. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. So questions from council then on this? Seeing none, all those in favor? That's carried. You're on a roll here, Mr. Clerk. Next, we have moved by Councillor Douglas, second by Councillor Ottens. That's CAO's report CL 2022-06 dated March 22nd, 2022 regarding the GHG inventory. Technical proposal be received for information. And that's council direct the CEO to work with SEMA Plus to create a plan allowing Mapleton to transition towards sustainable way of doing business and develop a plan to combat climate change. I'll turn this over to the CEO for any comments.
Thank you, Worship. I don't think there's much to say that the folks from SEMA said, unless there's any questions. Bit of a different presentation, but hopefully I answered all the questions, and so did Julie.
So any further questions on this and on this resolution? Any questions at all? Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I like the idea. I think it could be very valuable, providing we get an action plan or a final report out of it that, we can sink our teeth into and actually do something about, and that it doesn't just sit on a shelf. I can't imagine the results are going to be cheap though, considering these types of initiatives. To be honest, through you to the CAO, the only trouble I have with this report is using the executive assistant as a sacrificial lamb for 2022. I think that position was valued in this particular budget, and I'm just wondering if we could have some other potential options as a funding source for this study versus that particular position.
Thank you, Ms. Martin. It's a very good question because as you know, the CEO has landed on the sword for the last few years without an executive assistant to keep down the cost of other options for other projects we are doing. So very good question. Turn this over to the CEO. Anything else that you thought of?
For some reason, I knew that question would come from you, Councillor Martin. Yeah, it is quite busy without someone helping doing some of the work. But we're firm believers of leading by example, and what it takes is that sacrifice that you speak of for the better good of Mapleton. That's what we're willing to do. I'm sure we can find the money, but we went after low hanging fruit there to try to find the money to do this very important project. We can certainly go back and speak with John to see if there's other places. But again, it was like I said, it's kind of low hanging fruit that where we can find the money to advance this.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. CIO. I figured you're the wrong person to ask. So John, are there other possible opportunities to find, like just kind of spitballing? I'm sure you've got a bit of an idea. Would it come out of a reserve fund potentially, or a reserve, or what would your thoughts be? Not to dismiss what you're.
Put your mic on, please.
Your worship, I believe we could utilize some of our reserves to pay for this.
Thank you. I'd say take it out of Mr. Martina's budget, but I know he's a little bit strapped. But
Pinching a nerve when you say
that. I know, it's on Twitch. Any further thoughts and questions on this report? Do we have a movement to find money elsewhere besides taking it out of the position? Does council want to give that direction that we take it out of reserves instead and get that executive assistant put back in place? Councilor Craven.
I would suggest we leave it up to the CAO as to whether he advances this project or whether you maybe wait till next year for his executives. I would like to leave it up to the CAO to make that decision.
I would make a motion that we alter the financing to take it out of reserves then, rather, and not sacrifice that position.
So we have a motion on the floor by Councillor Ottens that the funding for the GHG work come out of reserves. I have someone to second that. Councillor Martin will second that then. Any comments and questions on that motion? So put that motion on the floor first, Mr. Clerk. So put that motion on the floor that funding come out of reserves. All those in favor? Perfect. Any further comments and questions on this work? On this, go back to the original resolution. And I'll call the question. All those in favor of this resolution for CEO to work with SEMA Plus on the GHG? All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Now you gotta start hiring an executive assistant, Mr. Barron. Next, we have resolution here, moved by Councillor Otten, second by Councillor Douglas, that the Township of Mapleton Council received for information the Close to Home Report 2022-01, dated March 22nd, 2022, regarding an extension of 1 year from March 31st, 2022 to March 31st, 2023 to the multi-sectoral accountability agreement. And further, that council authorizes the mayor and the CEO to execute the MSAA extension letter. I'll turn that over to Helen Edwards. Take the podium, please, Helen. It's closest mic to you.
Yeah, so as is stated in the report, the contract is extended for 1 more year. The Ontario Health has a lot of things to work out right now and did not want to ask the health service providers to put together an account, a planning presentation for each individual program. So it is again 1 year. So hoping that you guys will sign the letter and keep me on board. Thank you.
Helen's begging for her position right here. No, keep me on board. Helen, you're doing great work with the seniors, and all of us recognize the work the seniors that you're doing for the seniors and your team, and how the seniors are benefiting in the community from the work you're doing. Questions, comments right now on this, Councillor Martin?
It's a simple one. How did pickleball go? I know it was the first, and I saw a good crowd of people walking in. How was the turnout?
Now, Amy arranged the pickleball and graciously allowed me to be like a partner. And it is my understanding that it went really, really well.
Are you planning on joining up there, Councillor Martin? Is that the idea is? Mondays and Fridays? Well, apparently not. It's for anybody, Councillor Martin. Thank you for that, comic bit you did. Any further questions or comments on the report, not pickleball? All those in favor? It's carried. Thank you. Thank you, Helen. And next we have here the fire department. Moved by Councillor Douglas, second by Councillor Ottens, that Township Mapleton Council received for information fire report FR 2022-03 monthly communique. Chief, you're back. You're on.
So again, this is the same as the January and February reports. We want to update the council and the community on what training, what kind of calls we're getting, honoring our firefighters for years of service, which we have done in the past through the annual Christmas party, which hasn't happened for a couple of years. So this is a way to get their name out in the public. And also we have a new member that we want to introduce to our own team too. Get together with Drayton Warfield recently. So just to introduce that person and show some of the training we're doing. We're also hosting a lot of county training. The county recruit training is very important to this county, especially with certification coming up by the province soon. And so the Wellington County program is working really well. It's kind of the wish of most counties in the town in the province to get the same thing going. And so we're working with them. And at the bottom, I put in there that the Guelph Paramedic Service, they have changed as of Sunday to a 24-hour service in Drayton. So instead of the ambulance being there 8 in the morning till 8 at night, 7 days a week, it's now at the Drayton Hall, 24 hours a day. Right now it's being dispatched. It says on the thing that they're going to be dispatched from the John Street location, but that's not ready to go yet. They're thinking it might be May yet before they can get in there. So that just came up last weekend, actually, that they wouldn't be ready. So the paramedics are there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week until John Street opens up.
Thank you, Chief. And you highlight here that Andy McDonald, 25 years, and Eric Deckert, 10 years. And it's unfortunate we can't see these people in person, but it's fantastic that we have some long-term firefighters on. And of course, you got the new one for Drayton, is Christine. And I don't know how to say it, Villiette? Okay. And where did Christine come from? Is she from?
Took training at the okay. She came from Southwest Training Academy for firefighting and in the Drumbo area, but her town she came from was somewhere near Newmarket, I believe. Yeah.
Excellent.
I also mentioned that Eric Deckert has 10 years on here because officially he has 10 years with Mapleton. He also had 10 years with Wellesley Linwood before that. So we actually in his medals, we do give him 20 years, but officially Mapleton, he's been 10 years.
He's a longtime firefighter as well. It's great to have these volunteers. You know, it's very important to have volunteers. And of course, if there's people out there wishing to volunteer, just contact the chief. We'll find a spot for you somewhere if you meet the qualifications. And of course, the chief has alluded to the report from regarding the paramedic service moving to John Street. Of course, that's delayed because they're just, they did the renovations. It's worked with the county. The county's done the renovations, but there's some hold up on some communications that they need at that location. That's something we've been working on for a couple of years now to get the paramedics to the John Street location, which was the old works garage for the county. So they're taking up 3 bays in that location, which they're running the community paramedicine program out of as well for the county, and they're going to be housed here in Mapleton. And as the chief alluded to, we have the 24-hour service, which just started on Sunday, which is great. We've had 12-hour service during the daytime, and then they've had a backfill during the nighttime from the other areas. It's good to see that the city of Guelph agreed with the chief of the paramedics that Mapleton should have 24-hour service. For those that you don't know, it's the city of Guelph that controls the paramedics for Wellington County and Guelph. And when it comes up to funding, so I'm glad to see that the council there has chosen to allow a 24-hour service up here in the township of Mapleton to service our community. We're such a vast area of Mapleton that is very difficult for the paramedics from other areas to cover us during the nighttime. And we'll also take some relief off of our fire department if we have that 24-hour service as well. So I'm glad to see that come to fruition. And we'll look forward to see the movement to the John Street address for the paramedics and the paramedicine program. We'll still be utilizing for short term the bay at the fire department, but that's going to be the supervisor. The supervisor for the north end is also going to be stationed out of here in Mapleton. So we're going to be well covered in Mapleton when it comes to ambulance services. Any questions for the chief on this communique? And I'll call the question. All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Moving right on, we have here the next report, item 9.5.1. Moved by Councillor Otten, second by Councillor Douglas, that the Township of Mapleton Council receive for information Public Works Report, PW 2022-02. Dated March 22nd, 2022, regarding the Drayton Elevated Water Tower Tank Alternative Design Color Scheme Options. And that Township of Mapleton Council provide comments to staff on the options presented to this report, in this report, for the Drayton Elevated Water Tank Alternative Design Color Scheme for follow-up presentation and final selection. Turning that over to Mr. Matina, who's all dressed up, looking dapper today.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If I have permission to approach the bench, I have a handout.
Approach the bench as you may.
So these are the options that council has requested. Clerk will be showing them on the screen. Sir. So I've handed out, at the last meeting, we presented some options for the alternate colors for the tower. And in the report, those colors were listed. The pricing for those colors were listed. Council at that meeting asked us to come back with 4 additional alternatives. And the alternatives were all depicted on these attachments here. And we have some pricing according to the requested depictions. So that's on the attachment there. There's an accompanying email which explains the pricing. So there's 4 options that council asked for, and we have an additional 5th option that was proposed by staff. So there's only one option. Well, actually, the 4 options are listed here with the prices. So if council permits, I will go through them one by one. So option 1 is $60,000, $60,342 plus 6 days of work. Option 2, $43,546 plus 4 additional days of work. Option 3 is $60,342 plus 6 days of work. And option 4 was $43,546 with 4 days of additional work. The 5th option, which was not requested by council, but proposed by staff, has been priced out at $9,555 and 1 additional day of work. I must point out as well that in the original report, there was one option that was included in the contract already, which was of no charge. And so that one is depicted on the original drawing, or sorry, in the original report, in the original attachments.
Thank you, Mr. Tina. I think we'll just refer that to the cake design. I think everybody knows what the cake design is.
There you go. So page 2 of the attachment I just gave you is the 5th depiction at $9,555. And it's shown on the bottom of page 1 as well. So I've got the original designs here and layouts and pricing. If council has any questions, I can refer to those for you. They're on the 3rd and 4th page.
Thank you, Mr. Matina. If there's any questions, I'm sure there are. This is the time that we have to make a decision today so that they can get the work done in April, because we don't have another meeting until the end of April and be too late then. So I have to make a decision today on what council approves. And we'll open up the questions to council, to Mr. Matina. I'll give you a few minutes to look at the options. Turn your mic on, please.
If you would like me to reiterate from the original report, I can go over the original options as well. If you like. From the last council meeting, yeah.
Go ahead, sir.
So from the original depiction, these are shown on page 3 and 4. So option A has no additional cost. That's included in the contract, that depiction. Option B is $43,835. C is $43,835 as well. D is $47,230. Going on to the third-party designs on the last page. Option A was $69,139. Option B is $69,035. C, $65,622. And D, $73,340. And all these numbers are in addition to the contract value.
The contract value, if I'm correct, was $30,000.
Yes, I believe that's correct.
Thank you. Open it up to questions, council members. Go ahead, Councilor Ottens.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. I like option, just going by the origin, by this page with the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I like option 1, but I don't like it $60,000 worth of like, so I like creativity. I like it to be beautiful. I like it. And I think this really helped a lot, putting it up on the, like showing it that way. So I would say that my choice would be option 5, because it's the right blend of fiscal creativity.
Thank you, Councilor Ottens. And just to remind council that the bottom color, whether it be green, blue, purple, whatever, that's optional. So they were showing it in green, but that you don't have to stick with the green if you don't want to as well. Just leave that open, because as long as it's not orange, as this is why we're at this point again. Councilor Douglas.
I still like the original tendered price option.
The original from 2019, the cake design?
No, the one that's in the contract already.
That's the cake design. Yeah. We don't have a picture of that here, but I refer to the cake design because, you know, this is that's the cake design done by right. So that's the original one back in 2019, I believe, Mr. Martina. We're just not using the orange color, right? That's the one that we were decided upon. Councilor Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I know you think you guys discussed this at the last meeting at council as well. I should preface my comment, I guess, by saying I appreciate the amount of energy and time that different portions of our staff have put into this particular initiative, I guess, right? Especially considering the shortcomings of the initial color, which were pretty well documented. I think that, I mean, my personal, cost benefit analysis of adding extra money as far as the paint job goes, I don't think there's an economic benefit to it myself. It might look a little bit prettier, but considering this tower is significantly over the initial budget that we had projected for it, which no one could do anything about. I will bounce probably somewhere real close to Councillor Ottens and Douglas on it. I like the initial design on that was included in the tendered price. The Drayton lettering is very cookie cutter, whereas option 5 that Councillor Ottens suggested, it's still cookie cutter, but it blends in a little bit better. I would struggle with an extra 10,000 still added on to the overall cost of this this project, but I do think option number 5 that staff proposed is quite nice too. I'm perfectly fine with the green. But the rest, while quite beautiful and creative, are maybe a little too busy for my personal tastes on it, but considering it's a water tower and it'll have to get repainted, let's not forget about that. And probably at some point within our lifetime. So I think we have to think about that too. So I would lean towards either one of the proposals that Ottens or Douglas have suggested.
Thank you. Now, you touched on a couple points here. You talked about economic development. You talked about the financing. I'm going to turn it over to financing. I'm going to turn it over to the finance director. Financing for this over the time, the lifespan, I think it's 30 years before the repainting. Can you talk about that, please?
Through you, your worship, my understanding is that repainting would have to occur in 25 years from now. So for $10,000, that's not a lot of extra money over 25 years.
And we did talk, you touched on economic development, so I'm going to go to Ally for the economic development side of things.
So as we see from the cake, people are excited about the water tower. My suggestion would be to stay away from blue bottoms to keep with our coloring. I do think since it is our only water tower, it's going to be there for 25 years to try and make it look nice. Now that we're doing the water tower project, I do look at every other water tower, and the ones that do have pretty designs really stand out. So under my recommendation, I would probably lean towards the design just to make it stand out. It is the only tower that we'll have for the foreseeable future. So to kind of use it as a marketing piece for the township as well.
Thank you. So you can utilize it as a marketing piece. Perfect. Thank you. And just one other thing you touched on, Councilor Martin, is the cost of repainting and everything else. I read an article today, the Wallaceburg begins $3.7 million rehab of their elevated tank. You remember our back in 2020, our price for building our water tower is $4 million. And you look at a rehab, it's 3.7. So just how costs have gone up to refurbish these water towers. We're building a brand new one, and we know there's going to be money spent later on, but that's quite a bit of money for a refurbishment. Councilor Craven? So just get everybody straight here. So I got 3 people right now looking at number 5, which is this one here. Correct? That's what you're looking at? Okay. So can I get direction then by a motion that option number 5 be put on the floor? Go ahead, Councilor.
So just, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So just for clarity, that $9,555 is in addition to the original tender. That's not in addition to 1, 2, 3, or 4's.
So the $9,995 in addition to the 30,000 that's already in the contract. So it's just a $10,000 more over a 25-year period. So looking at the paint job would be $40,000 initially, basically. Is that Mr. Matina? That's right, $40,000 for the paint job if we go to option number 5, and that gets covered over to 25 years.
That's correct.
Thank you. So motion for option 5, please. Councilor Ottens, second by Councilor Craven. All's in favor of option 5? Okay, so we're going to put option 5 here. So read the resolution again. Moved by Councilor Otten, second by Councilor Douglas. Township Mapleton Council received for information Public Works Report PW 2022-02 dated March 22nd, 2022 regarding the Drayton Elevated Water Tank, Tower Tank Alternative Designs, Color Scheme Options, and that Township Mapleton Council choose option. How do you want to do that, Mr. Clerk? Do you want to provide comments to staff and options presented? And just add on to the bottom that council chooses option 5. Okay, and that township member council provide comments to staff on the options presented in this report for the Drayton elevated water tank, tower tank alternative design color scheme for follow-up presentation and final selection, and that council chooses option number 5 for the color scheme. Will that work, Mr. Clerk?
It does.
Ms. Martina, that works for you? Thank you. So all those in favor then of that resolution? That's carried. Thank you. Moving right along. We have here 9.5.2. Moved by Councillor Douglas, second by Councillor Ottens, that Public Works Report PW 2022-03 dated March 22nd, 2022. Reporting on the 2021 Drayton and Moorfield water systems in accordance with the Safe Drinking Water Act, Ontario Regulations 170/03 be hereby received, and that council acknowledge receipt of the Section 11, 2021 annual reports and the Schedule 22, 2021 summary reports for both the Drayton water supply system and the Moorfield water supply system, satisfying legislative requirements. Ms. Martina, anything further to add to that?
No, Mr. Mayor, these are the legislative requirements that Mr. Mortimer spoke about in his presentation, and the responsibilities for council to be aware and for these reports to be posted publicly.
Thank you, Ms. Martina. Any further questions and comments on this? I'll call the question. All those in favor? That's carried. Next, we have item 9.5.3, moved by Councillor Otten, second by Councillor Douglas, that the Township Mapleton Council receive Public Works Report PW 2022-05 dated March 22nd, 2022, with respect to the renewal of the Water and Wastewater Services Agreement between the Ontario Clean Water Agency and the Township of Mapleton. And that council approve renewal of the existing 2017 Water and Wastewater Services Agreement between the Ontario Clean Water Agency and the Township of Mapleton for an additional 5-year term, beginning April 1st, 2022 and ending March 31st, 2027. And further, that council authorize the mayor and the clerk to execute the associated amending agreement with the Ontario Clean Water Agency to extend the agreement. Mr. Martina.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the report basically outlines our system and the complexity of it, and the fact that Aqua has been under contract with us for the last 20 years, maintaining our system. So we have an operating budget right now of $1.2 million annually to run our system. And Aqua, the fee for Aqua is included in that $1.2 million. And this renewal here speaks to a 5-year extension to the agreement that that just expired. And they're asking for a nominal increase of 14%. The rate has already been negotiated, so we've squeezed them down as best we can, if you want to use that term. Yeah, so this proposal is for 5 more years, and should council approve it, staff will recommend a renewal for 5 more years.
Thank you, Mr. Martina. And my first question is, does this include the new water tower, this agreement?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, it does. It's and that's part of the increase in the cost is for the additional maintenance of the tower and the storage and additional chlorine requirements and so on.
Thank you, Ms. Martina. Open up for questions. Councilor Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is it's a process related question. And for Mike and Don, it's not related, it's not directed at Aqua, but for because I know our history here is long and rich but as far as when new contracts come, or renewal of contracts, so using this one as an example, now that the negotiated price for the renewal price is already public, is it I'm just wondering how fair it is, I guess, to, in this particular case, Aqua, because the price is out there in the event that, and I'm not trying to suggest the council isn't going to support it, but in the event council would not support it, there's already a public price out there. Is it fair to council? Because we're kind of in a position here, while I haven't heard of any rumblings that this is not an amenable agreement, but kind of moving forward, like, is there another way to address this while still maintaining public transparency with contracts, while maintaining the integrity of a potential price proposal?
Mr. Medina?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Martin, that's a pretty deep question. So we've thought about bringing the program in-house, and at the last renewal 5 years ago, and the costs involved are tremendous compared to a renewal of this type. Relative to, you know, starting up the system, starting up the staffing, the equipment requirements, all the components that that Aqua has at their disposal through their 800 staff Ontario-wide. Now, as far as fairness of having this price out in the open, I don't know if there's any other way to for council to approve an agreement without knowing the cost. You know, without bringing it forward and putting it in a report for the what the proposed renewal price is. I don't know of any other way for council to approve something that has no value up front. Now, staff have had discussions with Aqua, and we find that the proposed price is sustainable and equitable, and it's staff recommend that we proceed forward, that council approve this.
Thank you, Ms. Martina. Further questions? Or a follow-up, Mr. Martin? Not yet, still thinking, okay. Go ahead, Councilor Douglas.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess just to build on Councilor Martin's question, I guess I feel like our hands are tied at this point. We don't really have any options. I'm just wondering if next time something like this comes up, can there be a discussion about if we're going to seek alternative pricing beforehand, just so we have, you know, at least that discussion as a council before being presented with this type of a contract where, you know, like I said, we don't really have options, and options are good for us to be able to consider.
Mr. Martina? When you're looking at options, being other organizations that might be able to take on this role as well, is that what you're looking at? Like almost like an RFP process?
Yeah, are there organizations, or such as Sam mentioned, like doing it ourselves? Like, what does that look like? Because right now, like, I only have one option.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, sure. Request for proposals could be put out there. The process does take quite a while to go through, and then so you need a request for proposals. You need to scrutinize the proponents, score them, and then you know, consider their proposals and go through the whole process, which takes time. So the process should be started maybe a year ahead of the renewal.
Thank you, Ms. Martina. Further questions? Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I know Aqua is sitting right here, so I did want, I don't know if it was Baker's insertion of the photo of the freshly painted pipes and, or what's that room called? The pumping station, yeah. So I'm not sure if that was you, Don, or if that was that Baker that inserted that photo, but I noticed it when I was reading through the package. So thank you for that. It looks great. And so again, I think that kind of speaks to the relationship with between our staff and Aqua over the past bunch of years. And when there's discussion points, or you know, the company Aqua itself has been quite responsive to address those concerns. So I saw the picture, I guess, is all I'm trying to say.
Thank you, Mr. Martin. And yeah, it's quite noticeable change in those pumps and with the different colors. So thank you for that. Any other questions or comments then on this report and this authorizing of the contract agreement? Mr. Craven, did you have any questions on the contract? Thank you. So I'll call the question then. All those in favor of this resolution of the contract? That's carried. Thank you. And I think Mr. Martin and Mr. Douglas, that staff have heard you on your thoughts of the process. We'll look into that for the future. And not just for this one as well, but probably for the others that we do that come up like this. Next, we have item number 10, which is approval of the bylaws. Moved by Councillor Douglas, second by Councillor Ottens, that bylaws numbered 2022-023, 2022-024, 2022-025, and 2022-026 be hereby read a first, second, and third time and finally passed, signed by the mayor and clerk, sealed with a corporate seal. Any questions, comments before we pass those? Go ahead.
Just regarding 10.3, I'm sure we'll meet Mr. Sutton here at some point. I was just curious if he started already or, where he's from, or would Patty happen to have some background?
Oh, Patty, let's talk about Mike Sutton, please.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. Mike was a plans review fellow in Thorold and lives in Grand Valley. So he was looking to make the leap closer to home. So that was good for us. And he started last Monday.
Any further questions? And all those in favor? Thank you. We have no correspondence for council's direction. There's a number of items for council's information here. Anybody wish to speak or have any questions about any of those? We do have the very bottom, item 12.7, which is the Wellington County letter regarding holding an event for spring roadside cleanup. That's something that we've tried to do 2021 and 2020. 2020, when we first started doing this as a county to bring to the townships, and both times we were shut down by the province with the stay-at-home orders. So we're working again to have this in the township of Mapleton and right across the county for other townships that want to participate to bring a spring cleanup. And we'll pick a date sometime in May. I know that the province has their spring cleanup or their cleanup summer spring event, which is like a Tuesday. We certainly won't pick a Tuesday like the province would pick. We'd pick a weekend, a Saturday, so that more people can participate. And the county will bring us bins and we can put all the garbage that is collected in those bins and take it away at no charge to the municipality. Councilor Craven?
Is county going to have a yard waste pickup like they did last year? That was very much appreciated by quite a few people. I don't know how well it was received or how busy it was.
Your
But
curbside collection, you mean?
yeah,
Yeah, we've actually, as a county, Councilor Craven, thank you for bringing that up. The county, they actually extended it. So it's going to be from at the same time frame, but there's going to be 2 collections in October and 2 collections in November instead of 1 and 1. So we've actually added on to it because there's so much to be collected. And it has been a great program and it's diverted a lot away from landfill by taking it into the all treat to be processed. So that will be ongoing. It's been a very good program. We received much more leaf and yard waste than they certainly anticipated. That's why it took a little longer, and that's why they added on an extra one in October and November. Other items on here that someone wants to bring up? So once we have that date for the leaf and yard waste, we'll give everybody some rubber gloves and a pitchfork and go out there and clean up their areas. Any notice of motions, item 13? Number 15, other business. Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Simon Signer reached out and he just via email and said that he had to get a minor variance for a new dairy barn that they built back in 2020. And he had said at the time he wanted to invite everybody by when it was done. And May will be 2 years since they moved into it and they love it. And he was wondering if we'd be interested in coming by. And he asked me just to pass along a general invite. He could maybe do one little tour as opposed to doing 4 or 5. So if there is other members of council or staff that were interested in going by and on a little tour, then let me know. We can set something up. I'm sure my boys will be think it's cool to get a little tour. So their extended dairy barns have been the Duff barn over here. So they love seeing that stuff. So if anyone's interested, we can maybe reach out to Simon and let him know.
Thank you, Mr. Martin. Certainly I'm interested myself. And how about you arrange that through with council members and individually and find a date, and we'll probably go out one time. It'd be kind of good to do that. Speaking of tours, Mr. Matina, can we do some kind of roads tour? Take us out to some of the community and show us what's going on?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, actually, now that things are opening up, I haven't had a discussion with Mr. Kudo yet, but we have a directors meeting coming up soon. So I'll bring that up and ask him.
Yeah, the county is doing the roads tour, Mr. Matina. I'm thinking for a township one.
Oh, I thought you meant county. I'm sorry. Okay. Yeah, we can certainly plan something like that. Once the weather gets a little better, we'll get the van fired up.
Perfect. It'd be good for council to see some of the areas and maybe take some of the spots that are deteriorating a lot quicker than anticipated, and seeing why we have to do some roads better than other roads or bridges for that matter. I think it's very important to do. I know the county is having theirs. They'll be sending out that invitation in the near future for the county roads, and of course, township council and staff are allowed to go on those as well in the county tours. And I just can't remember the dates off the top of my head. It was brought up at this month's roads committee meeting, so that will be coming out shortly as well. Any other business that people want to bring up? All right, then we go to item number 16, which is moved by Councilor Ottens and seconded by Councilor Douglas, that Township and Maple Lane Council move into a closed session to consider the following subject matters: review and adoption of the closed session minutes Tuesday, February 22nd, 2022, and advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose. All in favor? That's carried, and we'll go for a 10-minute recess. Not longer.